Today we are going to explain an Irish historical drama movie called Black 47. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Our story kicks off in Ireland, 1847, when things were really bad. There was a big problem with not having enough food because of famine. The plants that made potatoes were getting sick. Even other crops weren't good to eat. There was also a fight between Ireland and England, with English rich people taking charge and making things even worse. We then meet Hugo, who used to be a soldier for England. He's talking to a young guy suspected of helping the Irish side. They argue about who they're loyal to and their love for their country. But things go really wrong, and the young guy accidentally gets hurt and dies. The scene shifts to show the heartbreak caused by the famine. People are suffering terribly. Dead bodies are all around, and the sight of mass burials has become sadly common. The famine is taking a toll on the lives of ordinary people, and it's a truly heartbreaking situation. We are then introduced to James Martin. He's a former British soldier who has just returned from serving in faraway lands like Afghanistan and India. As he comes back, he meets his uncle Peter, who's working for the British side and taking care of animals. James quickly asks his uncle about his mother and younger brother. Sadly, the news is heart-wrenching. His mother died because of not having enough to eat, and his younger brother was hanged for something he did wrong. As he grieves for his losses, James meets a widow named Ellie. Turns out, she's actually his brother's wife. She invites him to her home where he sees her 3 children struggling in tough conditions. Their situation hits James hard, and he realizes that staying in Ireland doesn't promise a good future for them. So he offers to take them to America and even proposes to Ellie, hoping to give her a better life. The next day, Ellie takes James to where their mother and brother are buried. She tells him the heartbreaking story of how things got so bad. The British government made people eat a kind of soup instead of letting them grow their own food. But the more soup they ate, the more money they owed the government. It was a terrible cycle of debt and hunger. His mother refused to accept this and suffered from starvation and disease. His younger brother, in a different tragic twist, was executed for defending his people's land from the British officials. Back home, they find soldiers and a nobleman surrounding Ellie's house. The soldiers start destroying her home to force her and the kids out. Turns out, Ellie is in debt and is being treated unfairly, being pushed to work like a slave to pay it off the debt on her head. James offers to pay her debts, but the soldiers don't pay him any mind. The soldiers just want Ellie to become a servant for the rich people. Martin gets taken to Army headquarters for questioning. The soldier sees that Martin has some high-quality weapons with him. They were amazed by the high-quality weapons. The commander then asked about Martin, but he ignored him and didn't answer, lost in thought. Out of nowhere, Martin hits the commander with a kick. Martin then shows his military training and defeat all the soldiers at the base single-handedly, leaving none standing. He then rushed back to Ellie's house, only to find it exposed to the freezing winter after the soldiers had dismantled the roof. Martin's heart sank as he discovered Ellie and her children frozen inside. As night fell, Martin tended to his wounds and plotted his revenge. Meanwhile, Hannah was imprisoned for accidentally killing a young man he thought was a spy. Unfortunately, the man was innocent, stripping Hannah of his veteran status. Facing death, Hannah was offered a chance to clear his name by General Pagan. His mission: hunt down Martin, the deadly British soldier responsible for the massacre at the army base. Accompanied by young Commander Fox Pope, Hannah set out to find Martin, fully aware of his formidable skills from their time together in the Afghan War. Despite the challenges, Hannah and Fox were determined to fulfill their mission and reclaim their honor. Martin, on the other hand, sought answers from his uncle Peter about his mother's and brother's deaths. Martin learned about the judge who had sentenced his brother to hang and discovered Peter's betrayal, using his mother's house as a pigsty. In a confrontation, Peter aimed a gun at Martin, but the winter weather had made the gunpowder damp. In the struggle that ensued, Martin overpowered Peter, ending the man's life. Meanwhile, Hannah and Pope arrived in the village where Martin was hiding, joined by a young soldier named Barry Hobson assigned to help them catch Martin. Their mission was to find Martin and bring him to justice. Martin observed Judge Dermot Bolton presiding over a trial at the local courthouse. This judge had sentenced Martin's younger brother to hang, sparking Martin's intense hatred for him. Many also despised Bolton for his corrupt practices and unjust rulings that favored the nobles. As Bolton handed out punishments, Martin's anger grew and his thirst for revenge intensified. He confronted Bolton in his office, presenting a rope and uttering his brother's name. Bolton tried to deflect blame onto the nobles and soldiers, but Martin wasn't swayed. He locked the door and with a chilling calmness, strangled Bolton to death. Hannah and his team arrived later, discovering Bolton's lifeless body hanging from the ceiling. Hannah realized Martin's deadly precision remained intact, making him an elusive and dangerous target. They investigated further and encountered Fitzgibbon, a local soldier also searching for Martin. Fitzgibbon offered to lead them to the site of Martin's burned-down headquarters, hoping it would lead to Martin's capture. Upon arriving at another crime scene, they were met with a disturbing sight, a deceased individual with a pig-like mask. Attempting to question the neighbors, they yielded little response due to language barriers. However, a local agreed to help as a translator in exchange for payment. With him by their side, they ventured to address the crowd. Martin's focus shifted to a place where soup was offered in exchange for conversion. Just like Martin's mother, who refused to convert and was left to perish, the scenario repeated with others denied food. Entering the establishment, he defiantly helped himself to soup while the rest prayed. Disrupting their leader, he confronted and eliminated him, sparking a brawl for food. Hannah shared around a fire that Martin was the finest soldier he'd encountered and that Martin sought a home like anyone else. He acknowledged Martin for saving his life during their shared time. Martin then set his sights on an agent of Lord Kilmichael Cronin, ignoring pleas that he was just an agent. This agent met the same fate despite his plea for mercy. Meanwhile, Hannah and his team reached the location. As Martin opened fire, a horse was fatally hit, leaving its rider injured. The gunshot roused everyone's attention. Hannah devised a strategy using the back entrance to locate Martin. Riding out on a horse with his rifle, Martin was taken aback to see Hannah among them. Amidst the tension, an officer had a chance to shoot Martin, but Hobson hesitated, enabling Martin's escape. Later that night, Martin visited Hannah, sparking an intense conversation. Martin questioned if Hannah was sent to find him, to which Hannah confirmed. He explained that England couldn't afford to lose a figure like Martin. Martin, however, rejected the notion, expressing the bitterness of fighting for the English, who allowed his homeland's destruction and his people's suffering. He disavowed his status as a hero and referred to himself as Hannah's faithful Mick. Martin challenged the morality of killing in the name of war versus punishing those who committed wrongs. Expecting Lord Kilmichael to be Martin's next target, they journeyed to his estate to warn him and placed a bounty on Martin. Outside the estate, protesters gathered, angered by the shipping of grain abroad while denying natives access. Lord Kilmichal's response to the death threat remained dismissive as he pressed onto the railway station to oversee the grain shipment. In contrast, Hobson, aghast at the sight of starving locals outside the estate, threatened to kill a police officer if they didn't allow the crowd access to the food grains. Despite the efforts of Hannah and Pope to mediate, Hobson met his end at the hands of another police officer. Hannah found himself deeply troubled by recent events. His previous encounter with Martin prompted him to reconsider his decision to have him arrested. As the night fell, Lord Kilmichael and the police took refuge at an inn. On the journey, Hannah couldn't help but notice Lord Kilmichal's arrogance and selfishness. Lord Kilmichael, however, appeared untroubled by the death threats, displaying confidence in his security detail's protection. As they settled in at the inn, a conversation unfolded by the fireplace over drinks. The discussion meandered through topics ranging from the country's scenic beauty to English maidens. Later that night, Martin made an unexpected move. Armed with a knife, he approached Lord Kilmichal's room, intending to strike. However, to his astonishment, he found Pope in the bed instead of Lord Kilmichael. The situation escalated quickly as Hannah and other officers arrived, encircling Martin. Amidst the confusion, Hannah struggled to make sense of the unfolding events. Faced with the opportunity to shoot Martin, he grappled with conflicting emotions, ultimately choosing to aid Martin's escape. Seizing the moment, Martin captured Lord Kilmichael, holding him hostage as he fled. Regrettably, Hannah found himself in hot water, arrested for assisting Martin's escape and for not taking a shot when the chance presented itself. Meanwhile, Martin sought refuge for the night near a cave, setting up a fire for warmth. Lord Kilmichael, seemingly unperturbed by his dire situation, arrogantly engaged Martin in conversation. He taunted Martin, declaring his refusal to provide the satisfaction of torturing him. The tense standoff continued as Martin replied, speaking only in his native Irish language to honor his heritage. Hannah maintained silence during the subsequent day's interrogation, refusing to divulge information. Despite being questioned about his connection with Martin and intentions, he remained tight-lipped. Bounty hunters were dispatched to track Martin down, and Hannah was sentenced to death by fire. Even as a blindfold was offered, he declined, standing resolute. As the execution loomed, the sound of gunfire shattered the air, cutting short the soldiers' preparations. Martin had returned just in time to disrupt the proceedings and save Hannah. In the chaotic moment before Hannah was to be shot, Martin launched an attack. The soldiers fired at him, or so they believed. In a masterful ruse, Martin had dressed Lord Kilmichael in his attire and set him on a horse. The police shot Kilmichael, thinking he was Martin. While this deception unfolded, the real Martin navigated to Hannah's side, launching a counterattack against the police. His bullets found their marks, and he managed to break the gate holding the captive locals. Amidst the chaos, the oppressed locals seized the opportunity to reclaim their grains, turning against Lord Kilmichael and the bounty hunters. Amidst this tumultuous environment, Hannah and Martin continue their fight, but Polk shot Martin, mortally wounding him. Racing against time, Hannah placed Martin on a horse and fled, but the inevitable could not be averted. Martin succumbed to his injuries. In his final moments, Martin shared a poignant conversation with Hannah. He acknowledged the looming threat and urged Hannah to escape the country's bloody history. Martin's dying wish was for Hannah to find a new life in America, just as he himself had wished. With his passing, Hannah was left grappling with the legacy of revenge he had pursued. Filled with a thirst for retribution, Hannah turned his attention towards Pope, seeking justice for the series of events that had unfolded. As he pursued this path, he found himself at a crossroads, literally. One path led to confronting Pope, potentially fulfilling his quest for vengeance. The other path, however, led to a group of people gathered to depart for America, among them Martin's last living relative, his young niece who had miraculously survived. Hannah stops there thinking about the path you wanted to choose. Subscribe to see more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.